Welcome to FALAS. Do enjoy our video case series on criminal law. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating case that asks a powerful question. When is an act so dangerous that the law basically decides your intent for you, no matter what you claim you were thinking? Let's get into the tragic case of SERECHI versus the state. All right, so let's set the scene. It's a December afternoon back in 1962, on a train that belongs to the Ashanti Goldfields Corporation. What kicks off as a simple act of trespassing, well, it very quickly spirals into a deadly confrontation, one that would end up setting a major legal precedent here in Ghana. So here's how it all went down. Around noon, the victim, who, by the way, wasn't an employee, decides to hop onto a slow-moving train. The appellants, who were employees, see him and they start beating him. But here's the detail that changes everything. The train starts picking up some serious speed, and it's at that point that they push him off. He lands right on the rail, is run over, and dies on the spot. This sequence of events, it's absolutely crucial for everything that comes next. Now, with such a clear act of violence leading to a death, you know this is going to court. And the initial outcome, it was swift and it was severe.
And bam, the verdict comes down from the High Court in Kumasi. The two men were found guilty of murder. We're talking about the most serious charge you can get, carrying the absolute heaviest penalty. But, believe it or not, the legal fight was just getting started.
So, to really get why they appealed, you have to understand the charge itself. For a murder conviction, the prosecution needs to prove two things beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that you inflicted unlawful harm. That's the easy part here. But second, and this is the whole ballgame, they have to prove you intended for that harm to cause death. Intent. That is the key ingredient. So, of course, the appellants challenged the conviction. Their appeal took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, and it all boiled down to a single, fundamental legal question. And that question was simply this. Was it really murder? Did they actually, truly intend to kill the man? Or could it have been something else? Could it have been the lesser charge of manslaughter? And this is the heart of the whole legal fight. You see, both crimes involve causing a death. But the difference, the thing that separates them, is intent. For murder, the prosecution has to prove you meant to kill. For manslaughter, they don't. The entire case hangs right here on this one crucial distinction. So the appellant's lawyers came out swinging. They argued that the trial judge made a huge mistake. They said he misdirected the jury, which is legal speak for saying he didn't give them the option to even consider a manslaughter verdict. The jury was basically forced into a corner. Find them guilty of murder or let them walk free. Nothing in between. So how did the Supreme Court deal with this? Did they try to become mind readers and figure out what the appellants were thinking? Nope. They did something much more interesting. They focused entirely on the nature of the act itself. The court just zoomed right in on the facts. Look, this wasn't just a shove in a pub. This was pushing a person from a fast-moving train directly onto the tracks below. The context, the speed, the location, all of it mattered a lot.
And check this out. This is Justice Alenu, and he used these incredibly powerful analogies to make the point. He's saying, look, pushing someone off a speeding train is so obviously deadly, it's pretty much the same as pushing them into the middle of the ocean or shoving them into a blazing fire. In situations like that, can you really seriously claim you didn't think they were going to die?
The judge's point connects perfectly to this massive legal principle, the idea of a natural and probable consequence. What it means is, basically, the law doesn't need to read your mind. If you do something where death is the obvious, natural, and probable outcome, the law is allowed to just go ahead and presume you intended for that to happen. So the court's logic was just airtight. It followed these three simple steps. Step 1, what did they do? They pushed a man from a fast train onto the rails. Step 2, what's the natural result of doing that? Death. It's pretty much a guarantee. So step 3, what was their intent? Well, the law presumes the intent was to cause death. The act was so dangerous, it spoke for itself. And with that crystal clear logic, the final verdict was pretty much a done deal. And it taught everyone a huge lesson about how intent is figured out in Ghanaian criminal law. So the final word from the Supreme Court was appeal dismissed. The original conviction for murder was upheld. The court saw absolutely no reason to overturn the jury's decision. So let's quickly recap why the appeal failed. First, like we've been saying, the act itself was just so incredibly dangerous that the law presumed they intended to kill. Second, the appellants gave the court zero evidence to challenge that idea. And finally, while the court did find a tiny error made by the trial judge, it actually worked in the appellant's favor, so it wasn't a reason to throw the case out. At the end of the day, no miscarriage of justice had occurred. And the big takeaway from this whole case is actually written down in Ghana's criminal code. You can look it up. Section 11, subsection 3. It makes this very principle the law of the land. The court will assume you intend the natural and probable consequences of your actions. The burden is on you to prove otherwise. And in this case, the appellants offered nothing. So we end right back where we started, with the question that is at the very heart of the SERECHI case. It really forces us to think hard about responsibility and consequences. It's a powerful reminder that in the eyes of the law, some actions are just so extreme, so inherently lethal, that whatever you thought you were doing, well, it just becomes irrelevant. The act itself is all the proof of intent the law needs.